Hello, my name is Michael Cirino with House of Attention. Today I'm speaking with Nancy Duncan, somebody I've collaborated in the past to bring crazy experiential ideas into reality. And I would love to talk to her today about where her future vision is for experience design and hospitality. Nancy, it's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
I came to the hospitality world through experiential marketing and from the idea of gathering people for brands. And I slowly started doing it as an artist. And then from the artist side, I kind of filtered into the restaurant, food, hospitality world. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal relationship with experience design and the kind of experiences that you like to design when you're given a blank canvas, so to speak?
I have worked on all sorts of experiences from the Olympics to World Expos. I've worked a lot with brands across automotive, luxury, fashion, etc. And the thing that I really, really love is bringing a brand to life in a 3D space as a true experience, alternative to going to a museum. That's my dream brief. And I've worked in Saudi Arabia, Dubai. I used to live in Dubai for 4 years, and I now live between New York and London.
Whether it's like a high-end audio lounge in New York or a museum in London or Riyadh or something like that, what is like a new physical space that you've been in that's kind of like blown your mind?
It's a bit out there, but thinking off the top of my head, the most recent thing I went to was actually a magic show in New York.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that's a little bit left field, but it was a maze magic show. And what was incredible was the storytelling, sense of nostalgia for the 80s, and then this sense of awe and magic and wonder with the tricks that happened. But they were paced with a story of the magician's life.
And what was the style? Was it the stage with a proscenium or was it a walk around experience or how
No,
did
it
you
was the
interact with it?
stage. It
Uh-huh.
was a stage, but the sets were really incredible. And the pacing was just perfect. It was actually one of the best things I've ever seen theatrically because it was so clever. The theatrics made you feel like you were walking with him through his life and you were seeing backgrounds of the theatrics from when he'd grown up in an English pub to when he was suddenly on Broadway. It was really, really clever.
You know, one of the things that I like to imagine is like we go through hospitality and experience design to gather around passions and to feel pleasures in ways that we can't when we're just on the other side of the screen. Like, what did you feel when you were in that magician's place? Being a theater designer, watching a great pace show feels, you get on the flow, you feel like you're surfing along with them. But like, was there a deeper impact beyond just you as a
Yeah.
guest?
He was so passionate about his journey into magic. It was quite linked to his parents and how they really encouraged his love of magic. But I felt like I'd been on his life journey with him. I almost felt like I'd followed him from aged 6 to present day. And his passion was so palatable. You really felt like you were in his life.
I personally think magic is one of these things that we forget is a performance art. It's something that is really designed one-on-one, up close, because it is about distraction. It's about manipulation of attention, right? Which, as
Yeah.
somebody who built a house of attention, I love this idea. Do you see any other trends that are currently happening in this idea of immersive experience design and hospitality that you think are interesting or more, I guess, permanently welcoming? Brands do crazy stuff all the time. I'm more interested in stuff that happens like the magic show for 6 weeks straight, not just one night. It's really cool to be able to do something impossible once, but I'd love to hear where you think trends are for how people are starting to gather again at the edge of outrageousness.
Given the fact that our attention is so fragmented in the digital space, I think people are really valuing in-person and in real life experiences that give them something that's a memory. We've gone from wanting a showy handbag or a showy car to wanting a really memorable experience that you have to be there to experience it. We're constantly bombarded with digital advertising, with everything, but what really stands out is how something can make you feel. And I go to so many things, but this magic show really made me feel like I was part of this man's journey of life. And it made me really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate my own life. It was quite philosophical. In retail, in hospitality, what I've noticed is the really personal touches. If
Mm-hmm.
someone is expecting you and they know you by name or they know that you have a preference for something, and whether that's a scent or a song and that's waiting for you in your bedroom, I think that a personal thing that makes you remember. So for me, it's really about creating memories at the moment as opposed to just lots and lots of content.
The idea of memory making for me starts with this idea that hospitality used to need to provide comfort. One of the foundations of hospitality was you're already on a journey. My job is to coddle you between the hard parts of your journey, right? And you can see this in things like the Michelin Guidebook, which is like, I have this hotel in the middle of nowhere, drive here, it'll be awesome drive, have the great stay, and then drive back and it'll be crazy drive. But like how does that process of hospitality happen when we can get anywhere in the world luxuriously? We can be anywhere at full level of attention and excitement. How do we push ourselves out of our comfort zones so that we do have life-changing experiences that make memories?
I think it's multi-sensory design. I think it's about connection with people in real life, connection that's meaningful as opposed to scrolling on Instagram. It needs to be
Mm-hmm.
a connection that you could only have in person, a really beautiful curated conversation. I've seen conversation cards. That was actually over a year ago. I started seeing these at hospitality events where you create conversations so people can actually have a really meaningful conversation as opposed to, how was your day? What are you up to? Taking
Mm-hmm.
it to the next level, because we are tribal. Human connection is the most important thing. And you don't get that from just looking on your device all the time.
That's an interesting bit. So one of the things that you're talking about here is not just the experience design from an aesthetic and kind of like wow perspective, right? Which a lot of what we do is set fabrication, or this brand is green, so we're going to make it feel green, right? And like it sounds trivial, but when you're somewhere that is uniquely dynamic, like I always say, Disney does really good storytelling, but they also plant $2 million worth of tulips, and $2 million worth of tulips is impressive anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like we do a lot of those tricks, right? You paint the whole wall green because that's the logo of the, and now all of a sudden you're somewhere that was normal before and now it's impactful. And I feel like that's definitely the foundation, but how it becomes alive, I've started to see a need for curation. With this age of AI, people can be customized, like you were saying, knowing your preferences versus somebody else's. How do we bring that to life in the real world? And how do we as experienced designers maybe choose who we're designing for a little bit more so that we can make it better and more passionate? And I don't know, do you have any projects where you've chosen an audience whose attention you were trying to capture specifically recently, instead of just been like, well, I want to get everybody's attention? Because like the World Expo is a different energy than being like, no, I need people who like soccer in that this one team, and they need to want to come to this tailgating event, right? Have you done stuff for smaller,
Yeah.
tighter audiences recently that you're excited about?
What I'm really excited about in a framework in this area is waders, swimmers, divers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but a wader is someone who's top level. They want to come to your experience. They just want to walk through, get the photo and leave. A
Mm-hmm.
swimmer is slightly more in depth. They want to take the next level, maybe understand the why behind something. And a diver
Mm-hmm.
wants to be fully immersed in that brand. They want to
Yep.
understand everything. They want to really capture the why and have a personal experience from it. So I haven't designed for a very narrow audience, but I've designed on that wader, swimmer, diver matrix where you work out what the flow of the experience is for each of those people, so you know that they've got a takeaway at each level.
That makes a lot of sense, because you can't have a passionate audience that doesn't start at the waiting level to slowly become more and more passionate, whether it be based around sport, music, art, fashion, food, time of year, culture, location. You have to be made aware of the opportunities. And then once you're there, you have to be made to feel comfortable and welcome. So that's a really interesting framework of making sure that you're designing for each level of passion, so to speak.
Another thing that I went to recently is a bit out there is Thomas Land, as in Thomas the Tank
Oh,
Engine.
yeah.
Obviously, I'm not a fan. This is for my son, but he was blown away because they were bringing it in real life, and it's quite a simplistic concept of being a useful engine and being a
Mm-hmm.
really good person. It's quite traditional English, but what was so great about it was the story is quite simple, that it was very easy for them to bring the story out of a book or a cartoon and into a real life moment and create a sense of awe and wonder, especially in a child, because they had Sir Topham Hatt, who uses the catchphrases from the show, saying, "Oh,
Yep.
I've heard you've been a really useful engine," and has the same accent. And that was pretty amazing, bringing him into a 3D world.
There's two places where I think experience design sings currently because they have permission. It's in child design, theme parks, fantasy lands, and in psychedelic wellness. Because either
Yeah.
one of those two spaces, you have to be really intentional about what you're designing, who you're building for. They're going to notice all the details. They're going to feel the discomfort, the scariness if the character isn't produced correctly, if it falls inside the valley of doubt, so to speak, you know what I mean? Or uncanny valley. I love that. And I think Thomas the Tank Engine is one of those larger than life things that if a kid stands next to, brings gravity to the moment and brings place to the thing in a way that I can imagine is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a small theme park like Great Wolf Lodge that we have here in the States, which is a seasonal water park where it's like an indoor water park? They usually put them near
Mm.
ski resorts. This is like an extension of the hospitality world. They come to ski for a day, come to the water park for a day. This one has a magic wolf energy game attached to it. And it's one of these things where it sounds simple, but it is a digital scavenger hunt. Kids love playing it because it is engaging, it's thoughtful, but it makes them run all over the hotel. And it's one of those things where for 2 hours, dripping in sweat, trying to solve these simple problems because somebody thoughtfully took their lobby and made checkpoints in different spaces. And the narrative journey isn't gigantic. It's not as rich or culturally impactful as Thomas the Tank Engine. But that little twist to the hotel experience changes every time we visit, and the kids look forward to it and all that stuff. And I find that those things are really awesome. Besides Thomas the Tank Engine, do you ever think about that kind of stuff from like a work perspective, right? Because it's like almost a fantasy land to build for stuff like that, an infinite character universe with something that somebody loves an enormous amount.
Where brands should be going, because I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
exciting. There is one in the UK, I've actually forgotten the name, but they changed the narrative. I think it's 8 to 10 times a year. So the
Mm-hmm.
narrative is always different, but it's in the same venue. So they have people come back because they've created true fans of the experience, which obviously is always great to have people wanting to return to your experience.
Punch Drunk did a good job of that in New York by slowly adding on to Sleep No More over the decade that it operated or however long it was, so that you had constant evolutions of the service, the hospitality, the show, the interactions. And I think that kind of set making is really awesome. And I love the incorporation of a restaurant, rooftop nightclub. All of those little additions take the theater and give you extra ways of sitting inside of it and escaping reality.
And that's essentially what people want to do and what experience designers should do is you want to escape your everyday reality, but not through a 2D digital experience. You
Yep.
want to do it in person.
So, what is a dream way that you would like to create an escape of reality? Is there a dream brand you'd want to work with or a dream run of show that you've been imagining?
There are so many dream brands I'd love to work with. I think the luxury brands, because they have such an incredible heritage. I
Hmm.
don't know if you ever went to Hermès Wonderland experience.
No, I've only read articles
That
about it.
was really, really amazing because you felt like you were entering the world of Hermes, but they made it a fantastical world.
Mhm.
They leaned in on the Parisian heritage. So it felt like you're walking through an Alice in Wonderland style version of Paris, but it was linked back to the brand. So everything came back to the brand, but it was fun and surreal. And that's what it really made you feel like you were escaping from reality. And I would love to do something like that with all the big heritage brands because I think they've got
Hmm.
such a rich story. And when the story is already there and it's authentic and you can bring it to life in a magical way, that's the dream brief.
And for that dream brief, what is the experience there? You're walking through a museum. Is there a call to action as a store? Is there a hospitality space? Because like I've seen such cute things from like Kith or Lacoste where they're building cafes and tennis courts in the middle of mountain ranges and they're in ski season, right? To have their brand visual,
Yeah.
their color symbols, visuals. Hermes is able to bring cement warehouses to life for their runway shows with color and excitement. In your brain, is it a touch the brand, feel the brand, and have a museum experience? Or do you see a different pathway at the end goal, right? Is there an owned touch point that you'd want to see people leave with?
You can do all of those things. I think the own touch point is probably coming into personalization. So you walk away with something that you couldn't get that's
Yeah.
Hermes, but yourself. So something that you've created that is a Hermes personalization, for example, if we're using the example of Hermes, or whether that is a hospitality brand and you create your own cocktail or you create
Mm-hmm.
your own perfume. I think when you can go into an experience and then you come away with something that is uniquely personal to you, then that's really, really cool. And I've done quite a few briefs with this where it's like at this time in this place, something that is personalized to you, whether you are creating a piece of art or it's to do with a photo render of you, whatever it
Yep.
is, but it's something that is time stamped in that location, brought to you by a brand, then I think that's one of the coolest things you can do.
At the Future of Hospitality Summit, I'm speaking on a day about branded residences and branded hospitality. So this looks a little different than what we're talking about right now, but I believe that there's a bridge between these two things from branded experiential. How does Hermes come to life as a historical storytelling experience? But what does the Hermes hotel look like? What does the Hermes hotel spa look like when it is near the Amangiri in Utah or at the roof of the world in Switzerland or in Alulia in the desert, right? Where does that brand come to life when the hospitality is permanent? And it's not just about making sure it smells like Hermes, but it's a lived Hermes experience.
Then I think it's super exciting because what you're doing is you're putting the stamp of the brand into a location. For example, if it was in Alula, then obviously that's a stunning setting. But if you can do something and use the Hermes brand in some way to do unusual branding of the scenery around it, but something that's really, really subtle and something that's curated and really unusual, that you have to be there to understand it, you have to be there to experience it, then that creates a destination with a second tier destination where people are going to also experience what the brand's take is on it.
I absolutely love this idea of taking a place like Alulia, which in and of itself is a destination, and making that second layer destination. And again, if we talk about your swimmer theory here, right? Anybody can find Alulia as a tourist destination because it is marketed as such. Anybody can go and have a good time. If you want to dive a little deeper, you can find the Hermes property. And then inside that property specifically, there should be unique Hermes activations that bring that hotel to life seasonally in a way that feels dynamic and like that brand. So that, again, it has a personalized experience with the brand, but also with the location.
Or unique collection that is only available from Alula, inspired by the location. Not a whole collection, but a few items.
I know what you're saying, the Mercedes-Benz city, but like, what does that mean? And it doesn't mean anything about driving. Yes, Mercedes is an automobile brand, but you're building a city. So what does that mean when the brand comes to life at a city level? It can't just be about transportation efficiency and elegance. It's got to be like, how does the engineering come to life? What does the color gray feel like? What does it feel like when Nancy Duncan renders Hermes instead of ephemerally? What does it look like when you render it in a more permanent sense like that, so that it can be a secondary destination inside a destination?
If we take the example of Hermès or another luxury brand, what I think would be really exciting is if we go back to the wader, swimmer, diver concept, then you would have Hermès at Alula. And for the waders, that would be a great little destination to have a photo, have a drink in a beautiful setting. For the swimmer, it would be, oh, I want to discover why Hermès have come to Alula, what their story is, how it may have inspired a collection. And for the diver, there would be a unique, not a whole collection, but there would be some unique things that you could buy that were Alula X Hermès, and they were items that you could only buy in that location.
Created intentionally with craft people nearby, bringing the Hermes voice to that place and figuring out how to filter it through. Again, that to me is the future of hospitality, that integration of place with international voice and editorial to make that second and tertiary reasons to come and visit. And I think that any space can do it. It doesn't have to be as amplified as Alulia or New York City or London, right? We can do this in a small little village on the sea. How do you make that magical place with that intention be local? And then if you can figure that thing out, I'm sure there's a brand or two that would love to reach out and connect with it because you have real purpose in existence. And then it's just a question of which one, not if there is one. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And especially if you're using local crafts, local people to help bring it really to life so it's actually authentic as opposed to just a brand coming to a destination.
Yeah, we had a great conversation with the regional developer for Minor Hotels last week, and we were talking about what it takes to make a project, a real estate development, feel intentionally local. And he's like, it's 25%. Like you can get around 22%, but like 25% of your budget has to be focused on taking materials and making them feel local, bringing local artists, architects in to take internationally successful structure and make it feel like the materials and the soul of the place, right? And he's like, sometimes it has to be the food, and sometimes it has to be the beds, and sometimes it has to be the adventures that connect your airport to the property and vice versa. But he's like, you don't know where it's going to be until you get on site, and that place needs to be made magical and local. But he's like, it can't be less than 25% or you're going to disappoint somebody.
Nice. I actually did something that's more relevant to that for Miami Formula E, where we were bringing the local Miami street art to the Formula E hospitality experience. So it was live street art from the Windward Walls, but using live Miami artists to curate the experience. And then again, with the wader, swimmer, diver concept, you could scan a QR code and you could purchase the pieces of art if you wanted to go further with the concept.
That 1-2 punch of live tourism, bringing people together, having that moment to then engage and dive deeper into the local place. I mean, that is the goal of great tourism and great travel. So how can we now start collaborating more often on that on the brand and destination side? It shouldn't just always be around the Formula E race. If we can stem that conversation to a passionate audience, then that kind of experiential marketing can happen more often and kind of grab people's attention more often. Bringing together the live artists in the moment fits for the tourist, but if we can figure out how to make it fit for the local person also, I think that's the next round of synergy, right? You can't just spend the 25% to make the visitors feel a local experience. You also have to spend that 25% so that the local people feel bought into the project in a way where they want to see it succeed generationally, not just for a marketing series or two. A real good place like Coney Island starts and lasts for 100 years. It's interesting to think of Hermès being responsible, or Supreme, or Ford, or Land Rover Discovery in this new mix, because some of those brands are the new reason for the moment to happen, in the same way that the government and the church used to do some of these holidays beforehand. You know, nobody asked Coachella to put a big music festival in the middle of April. Where do you think the future of hospitality is going in this, like, I'm not going to call it a binary system of permanent versus ephemeral, but in this gray area between permanent and ephemeral, branded versus non-branded, like, where do you see the future of hospitality and gathering passionate audiences going over the next 5 years as you and I work at both the Olympics coming at us, as well as interesting real estate developments in places like Alulia?
So with the decline of the high street, or the traditional high street as we have it, thanks to digital and online shopping, I think there's a real opportunity for less permanent, big, expensive installations, theme parks, etc. And I think there's an opportunity for 6-month rotations. So more than a pop-up, but a brand coming to a space for, say, 6 months to a year and then moving on to create that excitement and buzz. And I think that's where the real opportunity is.
I love that.
Well, the advertising isn't so impactful anymore. So I think people always worry about these experiences costing so much money. And yes, they do when they're in a theme park situation. But there's a lot you can do with a takeover of a space if it's 6 to 12 months.
And it does make that freshness that you're talking about for the end user as well for the brand, because it lets the creative team be able to take that brand, revoice it, keep it current, keep it fresh, but also let the local community have new and interesting things and not just a static high street like you were talking about. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, Nancy. I look forward to proposing outrageous ideas to other people together soon.
Great. Me too. Thank you.